Welcome back to Philadelphia Airport. A few months have passed since our last visit and things remain dynamic. With the summer timetable, many airlines introduce new routes and PHL is seeing its share of this, while a familiar player's future remains in limbo. PHL isn't for the faint-hearted, as we will find out over the coming months. The summer timetable always brings a certain excitement to an airport with increased traffic and new route offers from airlines. But will last year's shortcomings in staff and equipment again lead to a string of delays? Or has the airport's hiring initiatives and investments paid off? Time will tell. Another open chapter is the future of Spirit Airlines. After failed takeover attempts from both JetBlue and Frontier Airlines, the airline has now left its Chapter 11 protections. But which path will the airline take? And JetBlue's alleged plans of opening a base at PHL has become eerily quiet. Over at Terminal 1A Pier, we find a Frontier Airlines Airbus A320neo that has been deployed between Denver and Philadelphia today. With roughly 25 minutes left until the scheduled departure, the aircraft is now being prepared for its return flight. Due to strong demand on the route, JetBlue has today deployed an Airbus A321 on the flight to New York JFK. The aircraft is getting closer to its departure time. Some last catering is being loaded onto the aircraft, and also some last pieces of luggage get loaded while passengers are taking seat. Already on the go is this A220-300 of JetBlue that this afternoon will be heading to Boston, only with a few minutes delay due to some technical issues at the gate. They have been solved now and the aircraft is in pushback, heading towards Boston. Arriving and therefore right now waiting for the JetBlue to actually make way is this A320neo of Spirit Airlines. As we've heard, the airline is quite a bit in limbo right now, has left its Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, but is yet to find a new partner for the future. But for now we simply focus on this rotation, coming in with a few minutes delay from Miami and only left with about 35 minutes for an on-time departure going out to Atlanta. At the B concourse of Terminal 1, we of course find a lot of American Airlines traffic, starting off with this ERJ 170 that has come in from Harrisburg about half an hour ago and now has about 15 minutes left until its scheduled departure to Columbus. The aircraft is currently in preparation for that flight and should be leaving on time. An aircraft where things are quite a bit more quiet is the aircraft in the stand next to the ERJ 170, the CRJ 900 of American Eagle. This aircraft came in about half an hour ago from Key West, but isn't scheduled until about 5:30 in the afternoon, bringing it to Norfolk. In pushback right now and actually about to complete that is this ERJ 175 of American Eagle that earlier today arrived from Savannah and now will be heading to Washington. About 15 minutes left on the clock until its next scheduled departure has the 737 MAX 8 of American Airlines. It arrived a few minutes past 3 in the afternoon from Los Angeles LAX and is now being prepared for its flight out to Phoenix. But the departure might be a few minutes delayed as preparations are running a little bit late here around the aircraft. And it is a similar story around the 737-800 of American Airlines. This aircraft came in early earlier today from Fort Myers and has a scheduled departure time for Charleston in 2 minutes time, but last pieces of luggage are still being loaded. So the cockpit has already inquired about a new departure time for the aircraft, but finding a slot could turn out to be a bit of a challenge. So we will see if the delay will be a minor one or turn into a major one. On the other side of the B concourse, where we have wide-body stands for international traffic, we find an Airbus A350-1000 of British Airways that has been deployed on the airline's route between London Heathrow and Philadelphia. After the aircraft has spent some time at a remote stand, it has now been pushed back into this stand as preparations for the return flight will slowly pick up. Things slowly picking up is pretty much also the situation around the 7878 of American Airlines. The aircraft arrived earlier this afternoon from Zurich in Switzerland and will later this evening be heading out to Madrid. Some first luggage and cargo has arrived around the aircraft, but at least half an hour, if not 45 minutes, will pass before it seriously is starting to get active around the aircraft. Then we find a Boeing 777-300ER in the next stand. This, of course, from American Airlines. The aircraft arrived earlier this afternoon from London Heathrow and has about half an hour left on the ground until its scheduled departure for Paris Charles de Gaulle. One issue here is boarding hasn't started yet as the aircraft is still being fueled. However, this process should very shortly be completed, so crews are pushing hard for an on-time departure. Then we find an Airbus A319 of American Airlines that arrived around 20 minutes past 3 in the afternoon from Nassau and now is in the middle of its preparations for the next flight scheduled at 20 minutes past 4 in the afternoon, bringing the aircraft to Bermuda. Certainly one of the more colorful visitors today is the 737-800 of Alaska Airlines that is flying its daily rotation between Seattle and Philadelphia. There are still about 25 minutes left on the clock until the scheduled departure. Everything seems to be going smoothly around here, so no worries about an on-time departure in this case. No hiccups in the schedule can also be reported around the CRJ 900 of American Eagle. This came in about 15 minutes ago from New Orleans and has now about half an hour left until its next flight out to Pittsburgh, and as reported so far, everything is going well. Then we find an Airbus A330-300 of the Finnish carrier Finnair. The oneworld partner of American Airlines has come in from Helsinki, the airline's main base of operation, to where the aircraft of course will also be leaving a bit later this evening. And as there is still about 2.5 hours until that departure, it explains why it is still fairly calm around the aircraft. But we do of course also have a bit more activity around the airfield in form of this Airbus A321neo of American Airlines arriving with a few minutes delay from Phoenix. Later today it will be heading out to San Francisco. Or this 737-800 that around noon arrived from Denver and since then has been pulled out of service and gone into the tactical reserve of the airline here at its base in Philadelphia. But we do also find a little ERJ-175 of American Eagle. This aircraft already arrived this morning from Minneapolis and had to be pulled out of service due to a technical issue. This has however now been solved and the aircraft is being put back into service with a flight this evening to Indianapolis. And then we also find this Airbus A321neo of American Airlines just pulling off the runway, coming in from Orlando, and has a scheduled departure to Seattle later this evening. So there's no lack of traffic at Terminal 1, but what is the situation over at the airport hotel today? Over at the Bongo Inn, a very special convention is taking place. The NRA, I misread. The NRDA, the National Rubber Duck Association, has invited members for the Rubber Duck Enthusiasts Convention. This does also explain reports of an increase of squeaking sounds in and around the hotel. Terminal 2 we find a premiere at the airport with the first arrival of a new but also a bit familiar visitor. But first we find a Lufthansa A350-900 that has come in from Munich about 20 minutes ago. While passengers are deboarding, the luggage is being offloaded. While this is going on, one of the airline's newest acquisitions is parked in the gate next to it. ITA Airways has today its inaugural flight to PHL, but the history of the Italian airline is quite a bit longer. Already the predecessor airline, the legendary Alitalia, connected Rome with the US East Coast. After a pandemic-related break, the airline had made a comeback at the airport, but following various reconstructions and subsequent sale of Alitalia, the route had been abandoned. Now ITA Airways has re-established the connection, now as part of the Lufthansa Group. After an early afternoon arrival, the Etihad Airways 787-10 had been towed over to a remote stand. Now, with a little over 1 hour until the scheduled departure to Abu Dhabi, the plane is now returning to the stand. And there is quite a bit more activity around the Boeing 777-300ER of Emirates, but to be fair, it did also have a slightly earlier arrival time, but therefore also a slightly earlier departure time back to Dubai. Right now, the aircraft is being refueled and loaded with cargo as well as catering. So there is a lot of things going on at the same time, all of course with the goal to get the aircraft out on time. But that's the situation at Terminal 2. Let's head over to Terminal 3 and see how things are going over there. At Terminal 3 we do see the return of an airline with the summer timetable, as Saur Airlines has re-established its connection from Ponta Delgada to Philadelphia with a weekly flight of this Airbus A321neo connecting the Portuguese islands with the US East Coast. And next to the Saur Airlines Airbus, we find an Airbus of the Mexican low-cost carrier Volaris that have sent an Airbus A320 on today's rotation between Cancun and Philadelphia. The aircraft arrived around half an hour ago. Right now there's a bus at the aircraft bringing a new crew to the aircraft that is scheduled to leave back to Mexico in about 45 minutes. Getting pushed out of its stand on the dot is the Boeing 787-9 of Virgin Atlantic that will be heading over the Big Pond to the UK, more specifically London Heathrow. It arrived earlier today at 2:15 in the afternoon and, as said, now has a perfect pushback at exactly its scheduled departure time. What a fantastic and perfectly executed turnaround on this flight. A new site at Terminal 3 is Scandinavian Airlines that, after its switch from Star Alliance to SkyTeam, has completed its move of operations at the airport with the beginning of the summer timetable. And so the sighting of an Airbus A330, or in this case an Airbus A350 of the airline at Terminal 3, will become a familiar thing. The aircraft that about 20 minutes ago arrived from Copenhagen is currently deboarding its passengers and offloading the luggage, and then will be prepared for the return flight later this evening. Just like the Boeing 777-300ER of KLM, although the departure here is not in the evening but late afternoon. Right now the aircraft is being refueled, and also first cargo has arrived at the aircraft that is being loaded. The aircraft is of course connecting Philadelphia with Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And while there currently aren't more aircraft to be found right at Terminal 3, we do of course also have some remote stands around the area here of the airport. And here we find a Boeing 777-200ER of American Airlines. This aircraft came in around 1 o'clock from Amsterdam and has now been parked over here, as its next flight isn't scheduled until 6:30 in the evening, with a flight out to Athens in Greece. And next to the American Airlines 777, well, we find an Airbus A330-200F of Avianca Cargo. This aircraft has come in earlier this morning from Bogota, to where it will be returning later this evening. So with quite a bit of time until its scheduled departure, it explains why it is still so calm around this freighter. An aircraft that currently is taxiing towards its final parking position is this Boeing 777F of PHL that has come in from the company's main hub in Germany at Leipzig-Halle Airport. This is also where the aircraft will be returning to later this evening once its turnaround here in Philadelphia has been completed. And with that, we have reached the end of today's airport tour. Many open questions remain. What will the future of Spirit Airlines look like? Will the new ITA route to Rome become a success? And is the silence around the possible establishment of a JetBlue base at PHL a good or bad sign? The coming months will hopefully deliver some answers.